As a reminder, your action plan is due this Sunday. It was not due yesterday. No stress. It is due this Sunday, but I have to be clear. Think your message, got it. You do have to do your final project in a team. Every semester, I always get a few students that are like, can I do this solo? I can't let you do it solo. And as someone that hates teamwork, I feel you. I understand. I would rather do it solo too. I get it. You have to do it as a group. The university requires this class have a large team element. So you have to do it as a group. If this is the last week before your action plan, so if somebody in your group is not responding to you, at some point you just have to cut ties and just be like, all right, just do it without them. And unfortunately, what's going to happen on Monday is I'm going to have to go through all the action plans and see who was left off. And then I'm going to have to reach out to those people. And then what I'll probably do is everybody that's left off their action plan that didn't work with their team, they get put in their own failing team. Yeah, they just all get pulled off and put in their own team. And sometimes those teams rally and they just all take they all just take the hit on the action plan and they work together and do great. But inevitably, every semester, the only reason people fail this class is always not turning things in. And the most common thing not turned in is the final business plan because they don't do it. I used to blame myself when I was a young teacher and think, am I not making it important enough? No, it's important. You all know. It's 20% of your grade. You got to talk to your team. Right? Yeah, pretty standard. And the reason I know it is because people like you are out there shaking your head yeah, because it's pretty standard. It's easy. Just do it. Talk to your teammates. It really doesn't even take that much of a time investment considering you get the entire semester. So, besides that, this weekend when I was coaching soccer, I got to watch a coach get carded by the ref. And that was so funny. They're 8 years old. Chill out.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I was laughing my head. It was so hard.
And it's just like a rec league, right?
Dude, yes. Who cares? He screamed that something should have been offsides, and the ref didn't call it. And then he blew up so bad, the ref flag.
Did it lead to a goal?
No.
That's crazy.
And they were winning. And they're 8.
Yeah.
And he was blowing up. And in my experience coaching for 10 years, all sorts of sports and playing all sorts of competitive sports, the only coaches in high school and below that complain are ones that had loser sports careers that were not successful in sports, so they scream and yell when they coach kids. That's my belief. All right, team. So today we talk about power. I like power lecture. I get to tell a couple of fun stories. At the end, we are going, instead of doing a case study today, we're going to talk about the dark sides of power, which is kind of fun. We get to talk about some studies. I will actually tell my MBA students who listen to this lecture, plus they get their own lecture, when we get to the dark side of power lecture, I'm going to remind you that you can stop watching the video because you have your own video that covers it in more detail and is relevant for the homework, so you don't need to get the same information twice. If you listen to this lecture all the way through, you're going to get told the same things twice, but in less detail. So you should stop at that point, and I'll remind you. But before we do that, instead of talking about news today, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I tell all my classes this, and I'm going to continue to tell it until the day I die or until something changes, about reliable information and data and studies, okay? A little off topic here, except for the fact that at the end of the class, I'll be talking about 4 fairly famous scientific studies. So any time in the world, in business, or when you're watching the news, or just in life, when you hear someone throw out a statistic or a study, you should really think where that comes from and what that data means. I have published a few papers at this point. I have 4 to my name. I have 5 under review right now. So I average 1 a year from every year I've been a doctor. And my studies sometimes are misrepresented by other people. Because what they do is they take one little point of what you said and then they make it the whole thing. If you've ever watched the news and you hear them cite a study, and most people in America, especially when they hear about a study, what they're doing is they're going to whatever news source and they're reading what that news source said on that study and then taking it as fact. The best thing you can do is go read the study yourself. And also consider where the data comes from and what it means. So Lay's potato chips years ago, when they were trying to environmentally friendly was really big, hot topic, and you wanted to be environmentally friendly, they released an ad saying that we are now 50% more biodegradable. Our bags are 50% more biodegradable. They put it on their bags in big letters because that sells to you as a consumer. Oh my gosh, conscientious. Look how friendly they're being to the environment. Yay. But you have to think, what does 50% more mean, right? 50% more, if you have $1 million, is quite a bit more. But 50% more if you have $1 is not very much. Lay's potato chip bags were 2% biodegradable. They adjusted something to the formula. They were now 3% biodegradable. But they legally could tell people they were 50% biodegradable. When I was, this is kind of a weird example, but when I was in high school, I remember hearing this study so much that it was like fact. And they were like, ooh, men think inappropriate thoughts 1,000 times a day or something ridiculous, right? And I heard it so much that I was like, this has to be true. I had heard it everywhere. I had heard teachers repeat it. And then when I became a scientist, I was like, whoa, how the hell would you ever study that? There's no way you could know that. Because if I tell you, how many times did you think about pink elephants yesterday, right? And I ask you that every single day, it's going to go up and up and up. Or if I tell you, hey, this is what we do with certain studies, hit a button on your phone every time you think about this, and then we track it. Well, you're going to just start spamming it because it's on your brain the whole time. So that study was entirely made up, right? It was just fictitious, right? So I'm going to show you something really quick called Google Scholar. Do you all know what Google Scholar is? Yes, you do? It's actually rare. Do you know what Google Scholar is? Good. Do you guys use Google Scholar? Use ProQuest? Anything like that? Okay. Google Scholar is probably the standard to use. And the reason I feel comfortable arguing that we should use Google Scholar, sorry, somebody popped in the chat. Google Scholar holds most scientifically published research. Not all of it. There's a couple of things that get by. But when I started becoming a scientist and I worked with Dr. Greenbaum at Oklahoma State University, and she's like world-renowned in our field, she's the one that showed me how to use it properly. There's a lot of things you can do with it to use it better. But generally, Google Scholar is something that all students and everybody in walk of life should understand how to use. Google Scholar is just like normal Google, except it is attached to only scientific studies. Not all the studies are going to be good, of course, but you can type in an author, you can type in a subject or whatever, and if they're not behind a paywall, which some are, but as academic students, sometimes your university email will get you past those things. And then there's some shady websites that'll also get you around the paywalls. Don't talk to me on campus, I can talk to you about them, but you can get on here and ask whatever. So like if you type my name in, stuff will come up or whatever. So we can, I don't know, let's say the dark side of power. Oh, we'll say of leadership, so we're gonna talk about today. You type that in, all these papers pop up for it. And if you click any of these, you should get a decently reliable, peer-reviewed paper. These people wrote this paper. It was published at this journal. If it's on Google Scholar, it mostly likely is a credible journal. You can see how many times it was viewed. And this paper, had to be peer-reviewed by 3 other experts in the field. They had to have a reviewer, or they had to have an editor that overviewed these 3 editors or reviewers. It had to go through multiple rounds of reviews, and then it was published. So it's like, this is scientific fact, right? And then you can read this and whatever. When you're first learning how to read scientific studies, honestly, for most humans, reading the abstract is enough. The more you get into it, the crazier it gets. Now, there is a danger to this. You can almost find anything you want, and that is where critical thinking comes from. So if you say, does coffee hurt my eyes? Caffeine and vision, the effects on the eyes, can cause tremors. Caffeine affects the eye, risk factors for dry eyes. So all of these will be about the negative effects of caffeine in your eyes. And if somebody says, hey, coffee's bad for your eyesight, and then they go search this and they do confirmation bias and they go look at all these bad things that'll happen to you. But then if I say, does caffeine, I hope this works, but I'm assuming it's going to, help my eyes. Short-term effects of coffee, energy drinks, waters of eyes in young, healthy adults. Oh, this doesn't look good. Oh, wait, this is the one I'm thinking of. This one showed that it reduces glaucoma in your eyes and helps it in the long run. One of them showed, I wonder if I can find it on here, it decreased the likelihood of getting cancer in your eyes in the long term. But the point is, confirmation bias is very real. I'm sure you could get in here and you could look up all sorts of things and find studies that back you up. So just make sure you're checking where your sources come from. Understand what the studies are saying. And that is for all things. So when you're doing your business plan, even a lot of like case studies and stuff will be in Google Scholar, and you can be relatively confident that what's in here is factual. But that's where the problem is. People get most of their facts from like news sources that cite these, but they often miscite them, and that's always frustrating. Cool? Cool. And four of the studies I'll talk about today at the end of class all come from Google Scholar, and you can all look them up yourself, and yay. All right, now I'll share my screen. I know I just realized you guys probably couldn't see it too well in there, but honestly, there was not a lot to see. Boom. 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 All right, one. What is today's date?
6.
The 6th. Oh my gosh, we're getting close. You guys still dress up for Halloween? Do you have any reason to dress up for Halloween? You do?
Yes.
Do you like you and your friends? Go with the
So
kids?
my daughter's birthday is November 1st.
Okay.
And so every birthday for her, we have a Halloween costume birthday party
Well, Betty's the best.
until she decides she wants to do something.
Do you understand till midnight on Halloween? I'm just asking. I'm just advocating for your daughter.
I mean, if she stays up that late,
I don't know how old your daughter is. I guess I should have asked that.
she'll be fine.
She'll be fine. Okay. Yeah, that's probably too young to let him stay up till midnight. But I would think. What's up?
None of those PowerPoints are on Blackboard.
Are they not?
I looked for them a second ago. Didn't find them.
I dress up every year for Halloween, and I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And my kids are just an excuse now. But we always go as different things. They're really not on here. Oh, it's hidden. That's why. Boom. Thank you. We went one year as Pokemon, and me and my daughter were Jesse and James, and then everybody else was Pokemon and stuff. My wife was Ash Ketchum. She looks remarkably like Ash Ketchum when she puts her hair up, right? I don't know why. We've gone as the Addams Family, which I really feel bad because I did not do Gomez. Gomez is like one of the greatest characters in history. And my daughter went as Wednesday, and she did a really good job. Last year we went as Dragon Ball Z characters. This year we're going as Minecraft characters. I'm going to be an Enderman. Pretty excited about that. I love Halloween. You're never too old to dress up.
Are you getting like the whole like face mask and everything where it's like the black over your face?
We go like hardcore. My wife makes our costumes, and she's like cosplay level costume designer. She can make some crazy stuff. It depends on how serious she wants to go. But one year she made my son a SpongeBob costume that was insanity. It was great. It was like a whole box, and he could like get inside of it. It's good. Also, being a cosplay artist is expensive. The foam she buys for that stuff, oh my gosh. So today we'll talk about sources of power, how power can corrupt and enable. We'll talk about transfer of power to influence. And at the end, we'll take a break and we will talk about the dark side of power. We'll confirm all your worst fears. So, push this chair roll. It's always in my way. Power is the ability of an individual to influence the behavior of others to achieve a certain objective. I'm pretty sure that's the definition that your book gives. The only reason I have a problem with this definition is because it uses the word influence, and as we'll talk about today, influence and power are separate. So technically, power is the ability for you to basically force influence to a degree on someone, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are influential. It can be derived from many sources. Specifically in business, we relate it to 5 sources. Those 5 sources can honestly be put across the board to any walks of life. In a leadership/supervisor sense, power can be given, it can be earned or developed, it can be formal power, it can be informal power, it can be assumed by lots of things, like the fact that if someone walked in and I'm standing up here, there's an assumption of power. And it can also obviously be entirely ignored. For the most part, you can ignore a lot of power in a supervisor leadership sense. In that, in the United States, someone can just quit working for you and just walk out the door, and how much power do you really have over them? But importantly, power is entirely relative. Meaning that barring a few positions in the world, like maybe like President of the United States, your power is limited in scope. Does anybody here or online know who Bill Bradley is? You are going to have to be a sports connoisseur to know who this is. Or a fan of NBA basketball from the 60s and 70s. Bill Bradley, let me talk about this man's life really quick here. Huge man, well into the 6 foot, heavy set guy. Played basketball at Purdue, so big college, and also very prestigious college. Played basketball at Purdue, graduated with honors, and while at Purdue, won a national championship. So he was an NCAA champion. He also won Player of the Year, whatever they called it then. Then he went on to play for the New York Knicks in the NBA, won a national championship or an NBA title, the Knicks. So he's got a college championship, an NBA championship. Then he goes on to play for the Olympics for the United States, wins a gold medal. So like illustrious sports career. Then after he retires, he becomes a senator. So now he's a senator of, I believe, New Jersey, his hometown or his home state. Becomes a senator, uses his fame and his, great college education. Becomes a senator, very, very successful, very big man, very well known. One day he is at a, I believe it's like a, what do you call like a donor's lunch or whatever, where they bring all these people in and they're trying to get money from you. That's really what they're trying to do. So you have a really, really fancy dinner. And at those really fancy dinners, they typically have, if you've ever been to one, they have like a scheduled meal and everybody's kind of eating the same thing. And they bring out like your bread and your salad and your dinner or whatever. But when they brought out the bread, somebody walked around and handed out the bread. And then there was a guy walking around with a thing of butter and a pair of tongs. And he was giving everybody one pat of butter. And when he got to Bill Bradley, he gave him his pat of butter. Bill Bradley said, "I'm a big man. I like lots of butter with my bread. Please give me 2 pats of butter." The kid said, "I can't. I have to give everybody 1 pat of butter." And he goes, No, I don't think you understand. It'll be okay." And he's like, "No, you don't understand. I can't do that." Bill Bradley went off about who he was, because now it's kind of embarrassing because he's sitting at a table with like lots of other donors. And he explains who he is: champion, senator of North New Jersey. "You should give me 2 pats of butter." And the kid said, "I did not know that. Do you know who I am? I'm the guy that gets to decide how much butter everybody gets." And he left. And Bill Bradley told that story for the rest of his life. And he told it to say that in my whole life, all of my achievements and everything I had done, my power was limited in that moment to how much butter I could get because this kid was in charge of the butter, right? And that was kind of the joke of the story. And that is that your power is entirely relative to whatever situation you're in. I could be a tenure track professor here. I make 1 million A-star publications a year. The university loves me. I get all sorts of raises. And if this classroom door is locked, I cannot get in here. I have to go find Pam downstairs, who's the secretary, or I got to find a police officer who doesn't think I'm lying about who I am. They really shouldn't let us into our offices. Not going to bash the police officers here, but I've asked them to unlock doors before, and they have for me. And I'm like, you should really check my ID because I don't know you, so you don't know me. But anyway, that's another story. But the point is, your power is limited. And in business, if you ask my wife, who works with, she basically does customer advocacy. And every time she's pretty high up, there's only like a couple of positions above her within her company. But if she needs sales to do anything, dude, anybody in sales can tell her to go to hell because they go to their boss who can just, override anything she wants done to sales. She asks sales, they go to their boss first. And if their boss says no, there's nothing my wife can do to make them do it because that's how the chain of command works. That's important to keep in mind as we go on today. And I have talked to a lot of managers that exact scenario is what they get frustrated in. They think because they are high up and have these employees under them, that all employees at the same level at the organization should also be under them. That's not how it works. So the 5 types of power, the first is legitimate power. When we think about power, in an organization, this is basically what we're talking about. This is your title for the most part. And the power you get comes with the legitimacy of the position in title alone. It leans through the hierarchy of power in that we know, you have your C-suite people with your CEO, and then your upper management, middle management, lower management, or frontline managers, and your frontline employees and people underneath them. And the legitimacy of the power comes from our beautiful hierarchy chart and the titles assigned to everybody. And everybody up here has power to the people below them. It creates clear boundaries for power, which is important, and it often improves workflow, which is why we do it. You can thank, for the most part, the military for doing this. A lot of modern organizations that have kind of developed since the scientific movement of management kind of came about through structures of military, because it turns out when you're fighting and killing each other, you're pretty quick about establishing hierarchy and creating an efficient system. Some people in the military may disagree about that now, but a lot of our hierarchy within organizations are structured the same way for that reason, because it creates clear boundaries, it improves our workflow, but it does not guarantee respect just because I give you a title. And a lot of people think it should. When I say, you're now the manager, and then problems, which is what we see with nepotism sometimes, when CEO's son gets a position and then assumes respect but doesn't get it, then legitimate power problems. And importantly, legitimate power should not be mistaken for other forms of power. Something I see within organizations from a consulting role, which honestly, if we ever had to sit down, me and any of you, and had to talk for an hour, I could tell you the 5 to 10 things that if anybody ever hires you as a consultant, that you're going to see the most often and how to solve them. And then congratulations, you can solve 90% of consulting problems right there. And one of them is, I see really successful, good manager, really good at their job, get promoted, become more powerful, really successful, powerful manager. And then they have to hire someone underneath them to delegate tasks to. But they are so used to doing their job themselves and so much believe that the way they do it is the best way to do it, that when they delegate the jobs to this other manager, they're not really giving them any power. They're just giving them a title of manager, but I'm over in control of all your decisions. So really, you're just an employee doing more work. You're not really making any choices. So the power you have is left alone to being legitimate, in that it's in your title, but I'm not going to give you power to hire, to fire, to make schedule changes, to make objective decisions, or anything like that. That's all still going to come from me. Which is why we have other types of power, such as reward power. This is the ability to give rewards, to give you bonuses, to give people time off, whatever it may be. The power comes from the fact that you get to deal out these rewards. These are the people that hold and distribute the resources. Traditionally, managers have reward power to some degree. This isn't always the case for a lot of organizations, but most organizations, your manager has some control over time off, has some control over what tasks you do, which in itself can be a reward, making sure you only, you do certain tasks and not others or whatever. Tangible rewards we see are bonuses, vacation time, salary increases, all that kind of stuff. Intangible rewards are things such as praise, recognition, flexible work options, better workspace, things that are harder to specifically calculate. I'll tell you right now, as employees, you should always seek tangible bonuses or tangible rewards. And if it's something intangible, such as recognition or praise, you should make it tangible by demanding in an email that you can save and have for all of time. And I mean that honestly, that's good for your career. You should have those things saved. It's really, really good.
Flexible work options.
Dude,
That could go into tangible in a sense.
Flexible work options? Yeah, for sure. Honestly, if my job's like the definition of flexible, which is nice, I will say. I'll give you just a little thing on that. That's the higher up I talk to people at organizations, the more flexible their work time is, and often the more they work. And so in my job, I was all excited to be a professor because the hours are crazy. Like you got to really think about my job just for a second. This week, Monday through Sunday, I have to be here at 5:30 to 8, and I have to be in a class from 12:30 to 1:45 on Thursday. Outside of that, no one in this organization knows where I am or what I'm doing at all. I schedule my own meetings. I'm in my office when I want to be in my office. I do my work when I want to do my work. I grade papers when I grade papers, all that stuff. But I will probably work like 50 hours this week, right? Just grading. I have research. I publish all this kind of stuff, right? Because the expectation is I'll do that things in my own time. I have friends that work in, I'm not going to say where, they work companies, and they talk to me about how they're making way more money than me, how they've never actually asked for time off. They just take it when they need it, because the expectation is they just need to get their jobs done. And if their job's not done, they're going to get fired. So they're going to do what they got to do to get it done. So careful with the flexible work options thing. It can be great, but also it blurs boundaries. And I love my job. I actually love my flexibility and it works for me. But sometimes I'm working on the weekends when I wish I just shut off the clock at 5 o'clock. But I do know professors that are good at working 9 to 5 every day, and they won't work outside that. So they like force it. Reward power increases productivity, quality, and compliance. When it comes down to carrot versus sticks or reward versus punishment, it appears most people respond much better to reward. So for the most part, we suggest that you avoid punishing employees. You only reward positive behaviors unless someone's going out the door. But at some point, you have to. Now, coercive power. This is the ability to punish, or importantly, take away punishment. And I'll explain what that means. Docked pay, writing someone up, putting someone on a PIP, demotion, which is a horrible idea. If you ever take an HR class from me, don't demote people, fire them instead. People should only move up in a corporate ladder, never down. If you fire somebody, they're gone, and it causes a little bit of moral turmoil for the rest of your team. If you demote somebody, they're there and pissed, and it causes more emotional turmoil for your team. People get more upset when someone gets demoted than when someone gets fired. I'm not 100% why. I'm sure there's a study that explains it, but I know that's what the data says. But most importantly, getting demoted and fired both piss off the employee, and you'd rather them pissed off somewhere else. Should I say pissed off? Is that bad? My daughter started saying that at 12, and it just feels wrong when it comes out of her mouth, and I have a knee-jerk reaction to it, so I think it's bad. Anyway. Can obviously lead to backlash. You have to be very, very careful with coercive power. I'll actually explain the best way to do it. And it often inhibits growth and culture. That's why reward's better. If you have to punish somebody, there is a clear best way to do it, and that is to lay all the rules out beforehand, to be very, very clear about what's going to happen, and then accurately delve out the punishment promised and do it consistently for all. I have a syllabus that tells you all the rules here, and you all heard what I spent the beginning of class talking about. It is the final project. Because if I do not say everybody needs to work with their team, by Sunday, if your name's not on your paper, they can leave you off and you're going to lose 50 points and you're going to be put on a different team. If you do the final project by yourself, you'll fail. Don't do that. I have laid this all out for weeks now. If I don't do that, when I give a student a 0, I will immediately get backlash on it. But if I've laid all this out, I'll get minimum backlash on it, but not near as bad, right? But this is ultimately coercive power. I'm having to punish. I like to think that I'm not punishing or rewarding anybody in class. I honestly think I'm just holding the rules. They're all laid out. I don't care. I hope you all succeed. But either way. So requires being precise execution, follow through, like being a parent. If you have kids and you're not consistent, rules are hard to keep up with. And then honestly, with kids, it doesn't matter because they're not very rational little creatures sometimes. Now, the ability to take away power. Well, I think I'll have to talk about that more in a minute, so I'm not going to do it. Then we have expert power. The first time I made a slide like this, the slides moved around a little bit and I changed some of the content. These two on the slide were not divisive at all. That was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And oh, how times have changed, right? And I decided I'm not changing them. I'm keeping them both up there. Everybody knows who the guy on the left is. I think I'm starting to lose people. Do you know who the guy on the right is?
And like, looks.
See, this is a different time. No, don't make that face. As someone that's been a teacher now for only like 4 or 5 years, but I've had students that are in the early 20s all the way up, older students. I'm seeing in the younger students. Yeah, I know. The younger students don't know who some of these people are. They used to be. That's Bill Gates.
Oh.
Yeah, you're fine. It's not you. I promise. Somebody said Bill Gates in here. I knew Nate. Nate that says right there. I knew Nate would know who Bill Gates is. That's Bill Gates. So expert power, it is power from a person's knowledge, skills, or abilities in a particular relevant area. Now, before this, legitimate power is given to you in a sense. I bestow legitimate power on you. Reward power is often given to you in that your position within an organization, you have to be given some sort of reward power. Coercive power is the same, your position within an organization, legitimate coercive power. There's technically illegitimate coercive power like threats. But legitimate coercive power is given to you. Expert power is the first one that is unique in that you can have it in any position or not have it in any position, and it can be earned and created. So you can just get it yourself. Not that reward power and stuff can't be earned, but you can have it. You develop it, essentially. The reason I put these two up here is because if you didn't know, Elon Musk and Bill Gates are both, a lot of CEOs have nothing to do with their company. Like whatever they're the CEO of, they have no expertise in it at all. Like I guarantee you the CEO of Coke doesn't know anything about actually making soft drinks or the recipes behind any of that, right? That's just how it is. Elon Musk and Bill Gates are more unique in that the companies that they have, that they're the CEOs of, or were the CEOs of for Bill Gates' case, they started because they were experts in the area for the most part. For a while, Elon Musk was the head engineer of Tesla. That was kind of in a vague role. And Bill Gates is honestly among computers, is a computer nerd, was kind of a genius in the space. So they were, a lot of the power that they had early on in their careers is because they were just purely such experts in the areas that they were operating in. Especially Bill Gates. Honestly, Bill Gates just had pure mastery over what he was doing. So one of the people that could have succeeded almost in any walk of life because he knew it so well. So like the company was going to be successful no matter what. And then the last one. This one's so much harder to put your finger on. This is referent power. If you play D&D, this would be your charisma stat. I play D&D, shocked to no one. So does my wife, shocked to some. This is the power to influence others with intangibles, such as your personality traits. Referent power is often very natural. People just have referent power, or they don't. But it can, of course, be developed. I've said this a million times, and I'll say it a million more. My daughter has the, and I'm going to use her as a good example, and then maybe as a bad example in a bit. I don't know. She has an extremely high amount of referent power just naturally. She's this cute young girl. She's really good with her words. She knows how to be friendly, and she just knows the right things to say, and it's just natural to her. Not as natural as it was, like I wasn't as natural at it. Me and my son are closer alike in that regard. So these are your leadership skills, soft skills. These can be developed, and you can have them in any walk of life, though we know that the higher up you are in an organization, the more likely you are to have some sort of referent power, almost more than expert power, honestly. So those are the big 5 ones: legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent. I went through them in much more detail. When you do your homework, this slide alone will be fine. The only one that people tend to get mixed up, people will mess up referent, coercive, and I think it's because they're not used to using the words coercive or referent, but the other ones make more sense. I do want to say one thing really quickly on coercive power. I talked about being able to take away punishment as well as give it out. There is, and I think we talked about this in the motivation section later in the semester, there are times that you can actually take punishment away, and that is a benefit. And the best example I can give you is a guy that I worked with, or not worked with, I worked with him in research, basically. He they had to do safety training. I think they had to do a refresher like every 6 weeks or something. So they would come in, they do a safety training because they were working with their hands a lot in this big factory. But they had a rule that if there was no accidents at all, they could skip a safety training. So instead of doing it every 6 weeks, if there's no accidents, they get to do it at 12 weeks. They had to do the next one. Technically, this training is not punishment. But if you ask any employee in that company, they will tell you safety training sucks and it's agonizing. And once you've done it once, you've done it 1,000 times and they hate it. So coercive power of taking away punishment was actually the ability to remove that training and taking away what they perceived as a punishment. And that made them work harder towards being safe, apparently. Perfect. Now we're going to talk a little bit about positional power, and don't worry, this lecture, we're actually getting closer to the end for this section than we do the dark leadership stuff that I think most people tend to like, and so it shouldn't be too long today. So we have something called positional power. I'm going to give you kind of a funny example, and then I'm going to give you a serious example that works within organizations. So out of all these types of power we just talked about, we have something else called positional power, which truly is about where you are within an organization, right? And like what you do. So my daughter got a phone kind of at 9 years old. Mostly as a tracking device, if we're being honest. And it has like so much stuff blocked on it. I don't know if that makes me a good parent, bad parent. I don't know. It's kind of like good parent. Now, I didn't get a phone until I was 15 when I had to start traveling for track. But times are definitely different. And I got old quick, apparently, because when we talked about getting my daughter a phone, I was like, that's wild to me. I got a phone 6 years later, but it's a different time, that's for sure. But anyway, she had her phone and she gets more and more, control over it, gets to text. And I don't go through my daughter's phone. My wife does occasionally when she was younger, not as much now. But when she was like 11 years old, I picked up her phone and she had like these messages going off. And I saw that, especially what her friends do. There's like 20 of them and they're all in a group chat, right? Texting. But then within that group chat, you'll see another group that's got like 10 people. And those same 10 people are in that group of 20, but they're talking. And mostly they're talking shit about the 10 people that aren't in that group, right? And then within that 10, there's like 3 or 4 of them in this like little coven over here of group that are like dictating this whole thing. And if you follow the trend, these 4 would be like, hey, we should go see a movie on Friday. Whose parents can drive, blah, blah, blah. Who should we invite? And they figure it all out. Then you go to the group of 10 and they pitch the idea, right? And then they get all these 10, but there's people in the 20 that aren't invited, but only like a couple of them are. So like, okay, we got to get Sarah and Becky in here. And then they go create another group. My daughter was always the one making the groups. She makes another group and they invite these 2 in and then these 10, right? And then it's like this little thing that they built through like this information. Now, I don't know if these other groups have groups that are talking crap to everybody, probably. But also it's happening. The whole time I'm watching, I'm like, man, my daughter, the girl high in referent power over here, is like definitely starting all these conversations. And she's definitely the one like creating all these little groups and all this stuff. And I don't know if I should be proud or like not proud. But in the moment I thought, this is a great example of positional power, so I'm going to use this glass. That's really what I thought. So, my daughter in this situation is definitely central. Everything goes through her, right? In this example, right? Everything's going through her. She has a degree of flexibility in like who she can bring in, who she can talk to. There's visibility in her position, and that it actually says like who created the group and everything. And then what she's doing is relevant, because at this age, 12-year-old girls, the social game is like the entire game, right? I hope you keep looking at me. I hope I'm being genuous about
No,
this.
I was just saying to her, 20 friends is a lot.
Oh, the cheer team.
Oh,
That's what it always is.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say cheer team. It's always the cheer team.
okay.
Yeah, so
Makes the story make more sense too.
most people,
Like
most people don't ask those questions, but it's the cheer group. She has
Yeah.
a cheer group. It's the whole team, and then they break off in these little groups,
that
right?
makes sense.
She's a 7th grade cheerleader, so 7th and 8th grade are together. So it's actually a big team.
But there's definitely the group of 4. There's also another group of 4.
Talking
and another
smack on
group of
that.
4.
Oh, I know. I've had it come back to me before about people that like my daughter or don't like my daughter or whatever. And I got to be honest, my son is way easier. He's only 8. Maybe it'll be worse later on, but I don't know. I don't know. I think it was the same with my sister. And then I think I was more like reckless and dangerous. I think that's just the economy of most sons and daughters, but obviously not all. Now, a more serious example of this, to get away from my funny daughter example here. By the way, I think my daughter's a brilliant lady. I think she's going to rule the world. She's super,
I
like,
think she's gonna rule the world.
she's super strong-willed and all that stuff, which is really frustrating for me. But I'd much rather her be that than timid. So I'm all for it. But another great example of this is I worked at a different university, and I'm not going to say the name. It's recorded, but everybody knows. And at this university, there was at one point in the management department, we had it's like a secretary, like Pam's the one here. And this secretary was, if you've ever watched Suits and Donna, she was like Donna. If you've never seen Suits, then okay. But she was a genius. Everything went through her. If you needed anything done at this college, you emailed her, and she would connect you with the right people. So everything ended up going through this person, even though she's not a tenure track professor. She doesn't hold any sort of power within typically within colleges. You have head of departments, you have assistant deans and provosts and presidents, and she was none of that. But everybody would tell you she was probably the most important person for the College of Business at Oklahoma State to function, because every email, everything went through her. She was very, very central. Everything had to go through her. She approved everything, sent everything to everybody that needed to go, coordinated everything, coordinated events, very flexible in her position that it covered lots of different areas, pretty much everything in the college. Very visible, because when you walk into the School of Business, to see anybody, you had to walk past her desk. She was the person there. You could not see the dean unless she let you in up there. So everything visible, and then obviously very, very relevant. She had lots of relevance in this position. And I know that for a fact because she was hired after the person before that was fired, because the person before her was terrible at this job, but it was the same job. And so things were really, really slow at the organization. Couldn't get emails where you needed to get going, or couldn't get emails where you needed them to go. Couldn't get anything done. And the tipping point was Oklahoma State, the school I used to work for, had a massive job candidate come in, basically a really highly touted professor that OSU is going to throw a lot of money at to come. Flew in, did a job interview with us. Everybody loved him. Flew out. If you ever had to do a fly out, basically you submit all your receipts and then they reimburse you at the end. Submitted all his receipts, didn't get reimbursed for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and told us, I don't want to work at a place that's this unorganized. And she was 100% in charge of reimbursements. She just didn't get it filed. So, and she was probably making, I don't know, she makes probably like $50,000, $60,000 a year. So like honestly, in the totem pole at Oklahoma State, wasn't very highly paid, but had a drastic impact on everything. So we lost that candidate. She was not there anymore. And then the next lady came in and crushed it. She's amazing. Her name's Brandy. I'll say her name. She's great. I think she had a child and decided she was done, and the world wept. Ooh, we're gonna talk about it again. Which one I want to go here? Yeah, we're gonna blitz these 2 slides and then stop and then come back and do dark power and be done. So just because you have power, I just talked about all the power that you can hold, it doesn't mean you actually have influence, but power is necessary to have influence. If you influence anybody at any position in your life, you had to have had some sort of power to do it, even if it's just referent power, the ability to convince them to do it, right? Influential people don't have power, but powerful people, but not all powerful people can have influence. Just like I said at the beginning, you can work for an organization with a boss that can give you millions of dollars and can take away all your bonuses and whatever else is in this really high position, and you can, in the United States, just quit, and their power is nothing, right? So if they can't get you to do what you want them to do, then it doesn't really matter. And that is where the game comes into place here. There is an argument to be made that referent power is necessary for any other types of power in order to have good influence, and having power means that you have to know how to use it correctly. Most people that are using power well have multiple forms of power. Me up here as a professor, I have legitimate power in just the title of being a professor and being up here. I don't know if you would call my ability for grades to be rewards or coercive, but essentially I have some sort of control over something that matters to you all, which is grades. And then I have expert power, hopefully, and then I sound semi like what I'm talking about, which may influence some of you. If any of you have decided I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm saying, then maybe the only power I have over you is reward and coercive, right? Or title alone. And then referent power, I might have that. But the more of those things I can check off, if I didn't have control of your grades, if I wasn't an expert, if I don't have the title of professor, if I wasn't any sort of charisma at all, the less influence I have over you all to get you to do what I need you to do. And that is position that everybody's in. So when you're in an organization, make sure you understand what power you have and how to use it to influence others. And that often depends on who you're working with. That was another thing I saw when I was in Stillwater is managers there used to have a lot of reward power for college students because they could pay them. And then as college students, now it seems like, I don't know if they live off student loans, maybe they come from wealthier backgrounds. They cared way less about the reward power that the manager had over them. So there's something called the 3 R's model. These are influencing strategies. I have 3 other slides after this that are hidden that if you want to look through, you're welcome to if you want more information on all of this. But the retribution, reciprocity, and reason. Retribution is forcing others to do what you say. This ignores rights and fairness. This is basically explicit threat. This is you're going to do this or I'm going to fire you. Or it may be intimidation or more indirect, which is talking bad about people or insinuating bad consequences, peer pressure from other employees, whatever that may be. Retribution is a way to influence someone to do what you want, but we often see it as the worst way to do it because it only works in the short term. It tends to burn the bridge, obviously, but there are times that people do it, and there are times, and you may not want to hear this, that as a manager, you have to use retribution. If you have an employee that you need something done from and you have done everything you can to get them to do their job, the explicit threat at the end is, okay, you're on a PIP, and if you don't do this, you're fired. That's essentially retribution. It is my influence over you is you have to do this or you're gone. And that's it, right? It is what it is. When I'm a professor, I have to use this sometimes. If I have a student cheat or miss an assignment or whatever, and I have to talk to them, and eventually, usually it's cheating. Cheating's the only time I get pretty straight. It's like you have to do this or that's it. There's a time for retribution, but not many times. Then you have reciprocity and reason. Reciprocity is more like a negotiation for both of us to win. It is, I am going to, and we'll talk about negotiations in a different week, but it is where we are both going to gain from this, but maybe not all getting exactly what we want. So reciprocity is me trying to satisfy your interest while satisfying my interest. I don't want you gone all this vacation time. I need you to do this stuff, but you want to be gone all this vacation time. So sometimes I have to sacrifice that, okay, you're going to be gone for these days or these events, and you're going to do this for me, and we're both kind of losing out a little bit, but whatever. It's not a very good example, but reciprocity. And then you have reason, which if you can get to reason, as we'll see with the negotiation chapter, reason is the best if you can get there, which reason is convincing the other person that what you want them to do is the best. In a business sense, the best way to show this is, hey, if you do this or do what I'm asking you to do, that will be the best for the organization. And what's best for the organization is going to help you in the long run. Organizations use lots of strategies to use this type of influence on people. When my wife got her promotion, one of the things they did was give her a bunch of stock, because they give you stock to say, hey, when we ask you to do something, we want you to do it because it's the best for the company, which is the best for you because your stock price goes up, right? And that is essentially a reason strategy to influence my wife to do what they want. When they ask her to do things, if she views them as what's best for the company, they're trying to convince her it is, that she does it, and that's the best way to influence people, because then they're doing what they believe is best for them. It just is also what's best for you. That's where we all ultimately want to get. But we are going to stop for a second here. The other slides you don't have, and that's okay. Right now, if you are an MBA student, you should tune out because you have your own more detailed lecture on this, and you don't need to listen to the information twice. Excuse me. Yeah, so I'm going to pause just for a second here. We are going to come back in 5 minutes. All right, I do have to say this for my MBA students. You do need a lecture question, which I'm going to ask at the very end. So, if you're watching this after the fact, skip the video. If not, if you're listening live, I would just come back later and watch the video or stay and hang out, talk. I don't care. Jen's going to have a riveting lecture question for us at the end. So
Okay.
think about it. Week 8, power and influence. And now I get to talk about probably my favorite thing, which is the dark side of power. So I had a slide that said power enables and power corrupts. And I used to talk about that for a long time. And then I was like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull 4 of my favorite studies or 5 of my favorite studies. I'm going to throw them in the slide deck and I'm going to talk about them, including the Stanford Prison Experiment, if you know what that is. I don't know if anybody of you have heard of that. Maybe.
No.
So we're going to take a look at some dark power research. All of these studies, you can look up the name or look up the author in Google Scholar, and they will all pop up and you can read them yourself. If you want to know what they look like, I have all of them. Where are they? I swear I grabbed them. I did grab them. These are all the studies we're going to talk about today, including the original Stanford Prison Experiment. If you're one of those people that have heard about this study your entire life, you can actually pull the original study and read it where it looks like it's been written out on a typewriter because it's so old and it reads like an old study and it's awesome to read. I am a nerd about that stuff. But we're going to talk about the power paradox, the power approach and inhibition, the Dirty Dozen, which is a kind of a really popular study right up there with number 2 probably behind the Stanford Prison Experiment. And then power increases. Some of these titles you can tell are cool and some aren't. I will tell you in research, one thing they didn't prepare me for is you got to have a cool, catchy title unless you're writing for some giant A-star journals, and then they want really lame titles that are just descriptive. So I think my dissertation is 20 words long, and I can't even tell you the title. That dissertation I wrote, it's 156 pages. I don't even know the title of it. I don't, because it's so long. It just has to be descriptive. But then you have things like the Dirty Dozen and the Stanford Prison Experiment. Those are cool names. So you have heard, I'm sure, the whole idea of with great power comes great responsibility. And, having power can make people evil and all this stuff. And all I can tell you is if you're a nerd about superheroes, when it comes to Batman and Superman, Batman was right. You should have Superman in check. Because power, research shows power can corrupt. So the first study is called the Power Paradox. It comes from Kelter, 2016. So fairly modern, actually, as far as science goes. A lot of really popular studies you don't get to hear about for 10 years. The reason being is because they come out, and then as people cite them and view them, their site count goes up. And as the site count goes up, the study gets bigger, and it's easier to find, and then they get more legitimacy. What this study says is there is a paradox that we get with power, which is we, as humans, want the best people to have power, right? Our most honest, trustworthy, good people to influence this power, wield this power. And we want the bad people that have no empathy, that are going to use it for evil, to not have power. And what the study showed is that within organizations, the people that were promoted the most and given the most power were those that showed high levels of empathy and fairness. So when people were really empathetic, really fair to their coworker, they were given power. However, the flip of that is we see that the more power someone gets, the less sensitive they become and the less fair they become. So that's the power paradox. Your best people tend to actually get to the power, and the power actually tends to make your best people less empathetic over time and become worse to a degree. Guess what? Maybe you guys were talking to. I heard somebody say something. I thought somebody was asking something. You all may have actually experienced this and not realized it when you have the employee beside you that's such a good friend and then they become a manager and all of a sudden they're way less likable. Sometimes I have students that are like, definitely yes. But this study was used to explain why some ethical leaders may become corrupt over time. This is why you see some small organizations that are startups with really, really good intents eventually become bad or do something bad later on. And it's like, oh, they were so good early on. Then we have power approach and inhibition, also from Keltner. This is from 2003, though, so early on. Excuse me. They found that when people gain power, they essentially become more confident and take bigger risks. And there's a few reasons for this, but a lot of it is like the belief that if they have lots of power, there's less room to fall to a degree. So high power individuals take more risk and they have less self-regulation. I will say the riskiest people when it comes to business and in life are people that either have a massive trust fund to fall behind, or they already have a giant company a la an Elon Musk that can create ridiculous companies out of thin air because he has so much money and so much wealth, or people that have absolutely nothing. That is why, and this is kind of interesting, when it comes to millionaires and billionaires, what we see is that people that come from really, really wealthy families that are millionaire and billionaire families are millionaires and billionaires themselves and run successful companies because they can be super risk-taking and they can continue to take risks because they have all this power. And then also in the United States, actually, I think it's globally right now, about, what is it? Somebody can fact check me on this. I believe it's 70% of millionaires and 80% of billionaires are self-made, mostly from poverty. So people that come from low income to low middle income actually are the ones that go through. And it's this belief that they have nothing to lose. The riskiest people I ever meet are young men without kids or a girlfriend. Nothing to lose, not worried about it, super risk-taking. And men are naturally more risk-takers anyway. Not a lot of self-preservation going on. This study also showed that power affects the brain's reward center, which is kind of interesting. Reinforcing dominant behavior. So if you have certain characteristics that make you more dominant in certain situations, then you become that so more when you have more power. My wife's always a great example of this. She likes to come in and take control of the situation. She likes to make lots of decisions, no matter what the thing is. She likes to come in and immediately start delegating around. As she has climbed up through her company, I will tell you that watching her at work, and this isn't actually a bad thing necessarily, but as she has more power, she swings that personality trait around a lot. She comes into every situation with way more confidence and just like tries to take over. But this will hopefully help explain things like corporate scandals and reckless decision making. This is why, and there's maybe, I don't know what Elon Musk is on my brain, so I'm thinking about it. You guys asked me if I have my lecture questions beforehand. I do have my examples beforehand, but usually there's like 4 or 5 of them, and then I choose one. Or rarely I come up with one on the spot. But I thought about this one beforehand. I don't know if you all agree or not. Was changing Twitter to X a good idea? I don't think so. I've never actually met somebody that thought so. I've talked to marketing professors that are experts in the field that were like, it was objectively a bad choice. Because I always actually gave them a little bit of credit in that maybe it was like a ploy to draw attention to like lots of people would do it, you know, like
Yeah.
People would know about it. There's like somebody said that, you know, when he broke the glass on the truck, there was somebody within his inner circle that said he knew it was going to break, and when it broke, he ended up getting hundreds of millions of views on that clip over years of all about the Cybertruck, right? And it was like just basically freed me. I mean, that was better than any commercial he ever could have got, right? But I like to attribute like the change to X, I think, was reckless decision making with the idea of he can't fail. Like, spent all this money on it. If Twitter completely crashed, it wouldn't even really affect him that much, ultimately, because it wasn't his main source of income. I don't even know if he makes money off Twitter at this point. Is it called X? Is it called X, or is the company's domain still Twitter? I do too, but I don't know what it's registered as. It might still be Twitter. Is it X? Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's registered as X Incorporated.
Oh, interesting. Okay, because for a long time it was Twitter, and then but just the logo and the name was X.
I don't know, it just says X.
Okay, anyway, but I attribute that reckless decision making to that, basically, this study. Then we have the Dirty Dozen. And we're getting to the Stanford Prison Experiment, which is the famous one that we'll spend the most time talking about. The Dirty Dozen talks about narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. I talked to you guys about these three already. These are the dark personality traits. Narcissism, you all know. Machiavellianism is manipulation of others. And psychopathy is basically a lack of emotion for others. Machiavellianism always makes me laugh because the guy named it after himself, which is weird. But this study is actually famous because what it did was to measure each of these things. It's like a really long questionnaire that you have to fill out about somebody. And they created what they call the Dirty Dozen, which is we are going to create 4 questions that you can answer about somebody that will tell you if they're a narcissist, and then 4 questions to tell you if they're a Machiavellian, and then 4 psychopathy. And these 12 questions we're going to use to quickly decide if somebody has these dark triads. That's what the Dirty Dozen is actually famous for. It's created 12. It's not super accurate, but it's good for like quick analysis. So that's why it's called citations. But it looked at these and found that obviously people high in these, because the original point of it was to quickly assess managers and like CEOs and stuff. People high in these, does it predict unethical leadership? And it turns out that yes, people high in these 3 tend to seek power, but they tend to want to use it for personal gain rather than for collective benefit. And the study also showed that being high in narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy does not mean that someone is low in charisma.
What's the second one?
Machiavellianism?
Yeah.
What is it? Oh, manipulation.
Oh.
Like people whose personality trait is to manipulate others for their own gain. So I'm trying to convince you something in whatever way I can, like gaslighting or whatever, to get you to do what I want. But it's all about manipulation. It's actually funny because I had a student ask, could someone be emotionally intelligent? It's usually seen as a positive thing. And they were like, can you be emotionally intelligent and good at Machiavellianism? And there was a study about the dark side of emotional intelligence. And it was really people that were really good at Machiavellianism were really high in emotional intelligence. So they have a lot of charisma. They were really manipulative people with emotions. And that almost makes it even creepier because they understood how it made other people feel really well. And so it wasn't like an ignorance to their manipulation. There's an understanding of it. If you look at, if you ever want to get really cool into like serial killers and stuff like that, what was the famous serial killer that was really attractive that was played?
Ted Bundy.
Who was it?
Ted Bundy.
I think it was Ted Bundy. Yeah.
Or Zac Efron.
Yes, thank you. Played by Zac Efron. He is the definition of psychopathy and Machiavellianism, but super high in charisma and emotional intelligence. He was like very aware of how he's perceived and how to manipulate other people's emotions. So being high, this paper showed that being high in these traits does not necessarily mean that you are not high in charisma. Does not mean that people will not like you. These people may even have tons of friends, but they're also very likely to get power, and then also very likely to use power for bad reasons right out of the gate. Which is always a little bit scary because you have to, this paper basically kind of shows us all of your worst fears, which is the person that you feel like you should elect as your leader because of how they're acting, like they're being so good and they're so perfect, may secretly be really not a good person, but super good at deception. And yeah, we all kind of know that, but it's kind of cool to have a paper that was like, it's true. So that's that paper. Although I told you this before, the guy I worked with at Oklahoma State had a paper that showed that narcissists make excellent CEOs. Their companies were more successful because the company represents them, so they want the company to do well. There you go. And then on to the last one. The famous, I'm not talking about that. I want to go to the prison experiment. The famous Stanford prison experiment by Zimbardo. 1971. The study was done. I believe the original purpose was to understand Nazi Germany from World War II. That was the original purpose. I also would like to say I have a bone to pick with the study. Because of this study, I can't do cool things in science anymore. This study is basically the reason that we have an IRB and prevents me from doing fun things. It's really, really difficult as a scientist, I was like 26 years old when I started getting my PhD, and I was reading all these cool studies of things people used to do, including the prison experiment. And the stuff we used to be able to do was awesome. Like shocking people, that's pretty cool, but I can't do that anymore. One of the studies I got to cite for my dissertation was you would basically pit students against each other in the 80s about they would just like get mad at each other and you got to control how much hot sauce the other person got to drink. And it was like basically showing that students would get super vindictive. And instead of working together to lower the number of hot sauce, you could make them angry enough. They're like, I'm going to max it out for you, knowing you're going to max it out for me.
I was like, how do you come up with a study like that?
You'd be surprised.
Like,
The worst study I've ever got to be a part of was when I was a lab administrator and we were testing stress. And the way we did it is students did this for extra credit. How messed up is this? This was in 2000, like 18, 19, it's not even that long ago. We would have students come in and they would sit down at a chair and we'd put a piece of paper in front of them and it was like, nobody could read it. It's like so many pages, right? We'd say, this is a job that you're going to apply for. And I'm going to be back in 2 minutes. And then you have to give me a 5-minute job interview over this. And they would say, okay. And we would leave the room and they would start reading this paper. And then at 2 minutes, I would have to come in and take the paper off the desk, sit down and say, there's an X over there. Please go stand on that. And they'd go stand on that X, just a white wall behind them. And then I would click a camera on and they could see themselves. So it's like recording them, see themselves. And I would sit down and I'd go, okay, you have 5 minutes. Tell me why I should give you this job. And I was not allowed to say anything for 5 minutes. I had to sit there dead silent and let them just talk. And then at the end of 5 minutes, I would stop the camera and we checked their blood pressure and pulse before the study, and then we checked it after the study. And it was like all about job stress and stuff, like our interview stress. And I was messed up. I'm gonna go cry. I wanted to cry. Like I felt so bad. I was not the person to run that study. I was too emotional. So yeah, that's like as bad as we can get now. That was like peak bad. But back in the day, they were like shocking people. They could tell you crazy things. They could lie to you about a lot of stuff, and we can't do that stuff now. And a lot of it's because of this damn study. So the Stanford Prison Experiment, the point was, ultimately, how the hell did Nazi Germany start? It's like you have all of these people, the belief at the time was that humans are rational. Now our psychology belief is humans are bound in rationality. So we're like bound within the rationality of the situation around us. And it was like, how could these people do all these terrible things on a grand scale? Because it was so many people, right? And it's like, how did this happen? So they ran the Stanford Prison Experiment. I'm going to make sure I don't mess this study up because it's been a long time since I've read the full thing. So I made sure to take a bunch of notes when I was looking at it earlier today. Perfect. It obviously happened at Stanford. They took 24 men that were all college students. They gave them a psychological evaluation. They do not say how many people that they evaluated. All they say is that they gave 24 men a psychological evaluation. A good study would look at like 50 people and then choose the 24 most psychologically sound. It's a little suspicious that they only checked 24 people and they all passed. That's important to note. So I'm going to talk about that later. Because most likely a young, adolescent men starting college, some of them should not pass. But anyway, so 24 passed. They divided them up into 12 guards and 12 prisoners. And they paid everybody $15 a day, which this is 1971. I assume that's a decent amount of money.
$15 a day?
A day.
For how many days?
2 weeks was the original study. 14 days. 14 days straight in 24 hours. So you can't leave.
A day.
A day.
Not an hour.
They paid you $15 a day, 1971. This is 50 years ago. But
That sounds horrible.
so they paid $15 a day, 2 weeks, divided it up into guards and prisoners. They changed the basement of the psychology department into a makeshift prison, and they put all the prisoners in there. Then they took the guards, they gave them like a little briefing about like what they're going to do. And basically the rule was, you need to keep order and look over these prisoners for 2 weeks. We don't care how you do it, but you can't use physical violence. Boom, that's it. Anybody's welcome to leave whenever they want. Okay. They put the prisoners in uniforms. They gave them basically skull caps to simulate getting their head shaved. They had to wear all standardized clothes. The prisoners or the guards were given guard outfits. They were given a baton that was for look only. They weren't allowed to use the baton. They gave them reflective glasses so that people couldn't see their eyes, which was real important to them. And then they told them to go for it. And this is basically what happened. On day one, it was super awkward. The prisoners, the guards tried to put some sort of order. They started doing roll calls or counts where they'd make all the prisoners get up and they would count them. But day one was super uneventful. All right. Day two, there was a prisoner rebellion. The prisoners got together and they started barricading their doors so the guards couldn't get in. And as somebody, I used to be a 20-year-old guy. They were probably just like, this is funny. Like, let's do it. So they just started barricading the doors so the guards can get in. Because what are they going to do? Right. But the guards had a little bit of power. Remember, you have to participate in the study or you don't get paid, right? And the guards have a semblance of power in this regard, right? They are the guards. If you don't do what the guard says, you can be kicked out of the study ultimately. So the guards started punishing them by making them do things such as push-ups. They started doing strip searches, started making the guy strip naked to see if they had anything on them. And they started engaging in sleep deprivation. So they would wake the prisoners up multiple times if they were being rebellious to keep them from sleeping. And then they also started to try to put the prisoners against them by basically saying, if you are a good prisoner, we'll put you in this positive cell that had more amenities to it, right? And then they started pitting the prisoners against them by pulling prisoners out, putting them over here, and then telling them all these positive things and trying to, then they were telling the other prisoners that they're talking trash about them and like stowing all these like bad seeds, right? By day two, we had our first breakdown. Prisoner, who we only know his number because you can't have names, 8612, showed acute distress. 36 hours in, they had to release him because they were worried he was going to hurt himself. Prison 819 began crying uncontrollably because the guards told him that the other prisoners were saying that he did a bad thing and that they were chanting it in the other room when he wasn't listening. And he started having a mental breakdown. At first, he refused to leave. He said multiple times, I can't leave now. I have to stay. And eventually they had to force him out. So he was forced to leave. This is day two. We're like 36 hours in. Yeah. They actually replaced him with another person because it was only 36 hours in. 416 came in and immediately said, well, the guards are making us do all this stuff, but the thing they can't make me do is eat. So he organized a hunger strike. So all the prisoners stopped eating. And the guards' way of stopping that is to create the hole, which is basically a room with no amenities. It was a closet, if I remember right, just a closet. And they took him out. They made him stand in a standing closet only with the door shut. And we're like, have your hunger strike in there. And that stopped the hunger strike. We are on day two, by the way. Dr. Zimbardo was continuing the study. On day 6, a grad assistant came in. A girl grad assistant, who I might say, this is all men doing all this. A female grad assistant came in, walked in to see the study for the first time, and immediately went to the department and said, you have to stop this. And on day 6 of 14, Zimbardo stopped the study and released everybody from it, right? So that's what happened. It lasted 6 days before all hell broke loose. Now, the point of his study was to show that ordinary people who are rapidly given positions of power can become very abusive quickly. That was kind of the whole idea, was to say, like, how did something like Nazi Germany happen? Well, we gave them uniforms, we gave them direction, and we gave them power. You have guns and an ultimate anonymity to do what you want, right? And this is our great goal or whatever. And as you see with the prison experiment, even with guys making $15 a day, they're just kind of messing around. It took basically 36 hours before just terrible. Situational factors rather than personality can often drive authoritarian behavior, which is why you can see mass amounts of groups be this way. And power without accountability leads to dehumanization of others. So now we use the study to try to understand workplace abuse of power. People have used this study to try to explain things like nepotism, like when you give a person power who didn't earn it, whose dad or mom may have power within the company over them, so there's no repercussion. Essentially the idea that there's no accountability to their power. because they can't be fired by their parents. And that is the ultimate fear of nepotism. Though sometimes we see that parents can actually be harder on their kids when they work for the company, depends on the parent. So this became a hallmark study and the reason that I can't do fun things. Not that I would want to do anything like this. This was too far. But there were studies before this, like giving someone hot sauce. I can't do that now. Like, you know, I did see a study at a university one time that I helped with one day, just as not as a researcher, as someone helping run the lab. And they were like making people question their religious beliefs. It was weird. It was one that I felt uncomfortable running to, but yeah. I do have to say this because I am a scientist and I believe in being very transparent. There are criticisms of the Stanford prison experiment that actually fall back on Dr. Zimbardo, and maybe if he didn't run this study in good faith. The first one is, you all probably don't know what Confederates are in a study. Okay, a Confederate is someone that works for the researcher, but pretending to be part of the study. Okay, we do this all the time, but you have someone that's supposed to look like another participant, but they're actually working for me in the study.
Squid Games.
Yeah, like the Squid Game. That's exactly what it is. Usually we'll do it in like group dynamics. Like if we're studying cheating, I have 5 people, I put them in the team. One of them works for me and they try to get the rest of the team to cheat, right? And stuff like that. So there's no evidence that they used Confederates. However, modern researchers said that they did a briefing with the guards beforehand, and it appears that their briefing was hinting at them going overboard. And multiple people that have been a part of the study and around the study said that Zimbardo was influencing this. And then he did something super unethical, which is, I'm the head researcher, and if you need to leave, you just let me know, because that's what we have to do. I have to let you out of the study at any point. But also in this fake role play, I'm the head prison guard. I'm the ward. I'm the warden over everything. So if you are putting people in a fictitious situation where they are supposed to role play and believe something, and I'm supposed to play as the ward, but also the researcher you're supposed to talk to get out of it, prisoners were afraid to ask to leave, or like, when can I ask, when can I not? And it appeared that he was directing the guards to be more violent. And the reason we really think this is they tried to recreate a version of this study in 2001, and none of this happened. People were way more calm. But that could be because people know about this study beforehand, right? So some people criticize this study, saying that it may not show truly that putting people in positions of power, they're going to be wild. But then other people say, well, no, the point of the study was to show how things like Nazi Germany work, and it basically would have worked like this. I give you this and I tell you to be this way, right? And then boom. I don't know if Zimbardo actually said it was to study Nazi Germany, but that's what it's always compared to. So that is the Stanford Prison Experiment. It's one of the greatest studies of power of all time, definitely the most famous of all time. There are a million documentaries on it. Netflix has done documentaries on it. There is tons of footage of the experiment, and you can hear the prisoners and the guards say some really creepy things. They like one of the guards says, that's not my friend, like they were best friends before, and he's like, that's not my friend, that's just another low-life prisoner, or something like that. And people shift. So boom.
Friend after.
That's the question, right? The person that wouldn't leave, they had to debrief. If you want a little insight onto studies, when we ever do really rough studies like that religious study, we have to do what's called a debrief with somebody, which is like setting down and really talking to them about them to like calm them down. They had to do a debrief with them, and at the end of the debrief, they were okay. And I'm doing these a million times. The debrief is going to be something like, this is all fictitious, we're just studying this, this, and this, it's all okay. And so, I don't know, maybe. Studies also go through what's called an IRB now, so we have to get approval for this. But in a study like this, modern day, if there was anything this rough, there would be other people unaffiliated with the study whose job is to monitor it, like the grad student that came in. If I ever ran anything controversial at all, like where I'm stressing students or anything like that, you usually have a third party monitoring it, because I have incentive for data, you have an incentive for whatever, right? But if you ever do any study ever in your life, if it has IRB approval, which it should, you can always leave and not answer questions at any point. And most of the time, they still have to give you credit or money. So if you ever take one of my studies, you are welcome to skip any question you want. You can stop the study at any time, and I have to give you extra credit. There you go. Unless you don't do anything at all. If you just open it up and close it, I don't. But if you start taking it, you don't feel comfortable, boom. Cool. Cool. My Discord study is a little bit different because you could have backed the way it works. You have to do both. So if you back out of the first one, then I just can't send you the second one. Basically, is what the IRB would say. Oh, I can't turn this off yet because Jen has to give us our lecture question. Real quick before Jen gives us our lecture question, we have this week such a simple week because you're. I really thought for a long time I was going to push the action plan back. I'm glad I did. Action plan is due Sunday. Outside of that, you have homework chapter 5 and the lecture question. Cool? Very simple. Jet, what's our lecture question?
I've written down. Is leadership more about having authority or being able to influence others?
Wow, what a real question. I thought it was going to be like, what's your favorite soda?
Or
Okay.
color.
Ask it one more time, loud and proud, so I can repeat it.
Is leadership more about having authority or being able to influence?
Oh, that's good. So is leadership more about having authority or being able to influence? That's a good lecture question. Let me know in your lecture question. I'm going to stop the recording now. I will hang around till everybody's gone. You can all go watch Kansas City probably beat, who are they playing?
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville. Thank you all.